Hey everyone, Captain Amazing here, and today I want to talk about relic levels. So let's jump into it. So I've talked about efficiency a lot, and one thing I haven't really talked about unless you've been on my live streams is relic levels and where I leave them and why I leave them at that level. So if you can see all my GLs except for JML, they are all R7. JML is R9 because he is a much better character at R9 and he performs at a much better level. Where R7 is a perfectly acceptable place to leave important characters when you have a lot of things to farm. So I do want to talk about one thing that is important is mods. So if you struggle with mods, you can augment a simple R8 for a GL, and that would make it a lot easier to mod them. So if you see my Ray, nothing too special, right? Like over 10k damage, over 200k health, and some speed. But I've seen many arrays that struggled to hit those benchmarks at R7 because it's difficult. So I had to get mods that have health primaries and fatty offense secondaries is what I was looking for here. So 6%, 5% offense, and then on the off secondary stats, I'm looking for high offense percent. So if you look at most of my mods on Ray, I have a health primary with fatty offense secondary and good speeds. That can be very difficult of a benchmark to make. So if if you can hit these thresholds of over 10k for her damage, over 200k for her health and decent speed, then they'll pretty much perform. Same thing with SLKR. I have decent health, a lot of speed, crit damage triangle, and over 10k damage, but I do have also a ton of defense. So it's more of a well-rounded SLKR that's very fast, and but he performs exactly how I need him to at R7 because I have the mods that can kind of hit these thresholds. So a lot of these characters I leave at R7 because they perform and they do exactly what I need to do. I take down R9 GLs, I take down R9 characters of all variants with these characters at R7, and it allows me to quickly move on to the next thing because R8 and R9 are kind of prohibitive even at the end game unless you pretty much have everything and you have nothing else to farm. I do have R9s that I can spare. I think I have like 6 in my account, all the unlocks, and JML Padawan Obi-Wan Master Qui-Gon. So I don't have the new 2R9s for the snips for GL Ahsoka because I haven't farmed that yet, but it's not that difficult for endgame players to hit R9. But for players like me where I'm late game and I still have tons of stuff to farm, I have GLs on the backlog, I have things I'm farming for new characters, it is very difficult for me to increase in these high relic levels where it would hold me back on farming new things. So if you can park important characters like my CLS, my third sister, I have Cat, Grand Inquisitor, Star Killer, Bane, Bush, Kersantin. So the Inquisitors are just R7 for Riva, but that's a good place to put them. So R7 is a perfect level to leave those characters. It's a good balance between performance and efficiency to move forward and continue those farms. So I've seen players that park their important characters at R5, and I would say that's a mistake. If I see an R5 Malgus, it's kind of a pushover. A lot of these, an R5 Star Killer, it's not going to perform the same way. So I would say R7 is that balance between performance and also efficiency of being able to move on to the farm, because you can farm all the R7 requirements either through cheesing them or through having your get 3 currency, where R8, R9, it takes a ton of signal data. You have to farm other things that aren't exactly as easy to get with get 3, and it requires things that are just more difficult, and it makes it a lot longer to get to R8 and R9. So there are some benefits to taking some characters to R8 and R9, and that's bronzium wiring. So if you have a bronzium wiring problem and you do have higher relics, then you can take a break with relicking in between 1 to 7 by taking them to R8 and R9 for important characters like your GLs, like your Malgus, your Darth Bane, your Crescent Bush. If you wanted to do something like that because you are really struggling with bronzium wiring, then go ahead and do that. But I would say, unless it's a requirement, my rule is R7 is the benchmark, the height that I do. And even my Queen Amidala, I did not need more raid participation. I could have left her at R3, I could have left her at R5 without having any issues with what my raid participation needed to be. But I took her to R7 because she's a good conquest character, and the team itself with Padawan Obi-Wan and Master Qui-Gon are really good, and that's where I park my important characters, my foundational characters for a team that need to perform. And she's key, she's foundational. Like, yeah, Padawan Obi-Wan is the sword for that team, but Queen Amidala is the shield with her tank and increasing cooldowns. So it is an important factor. Next, let's talk about R5. So R5s I usually leave for non-foundational characters that belong usually on like a GL team. So like Bo Mando, Mara Jade, Padme, Savage, Sabine, just like good solid, Iden Versio too, good solid characters that you want them to survive, you want them to perform. Hey, thanks Estefano for donating. I'm recording, not it's not live or anything. So thanks, dude, appreciate it. So it's R5 is a good place to leave those characters that you want to perform, that you want them to have a good amount of survivability, but they don't exactly require R7, and it's not really going to change the performance. So R5 is the borderline of, hey, this is like a GL team, or it's a GL counter, or it's just an important team for me. Then R5 is great for that. R3 is limited towards it's a good character. I don't want to invest a lot into it, but I want to get them, the team itself, a Datacron. So controversial for me, but I took my Ben Solo to R3 because one, I didn't care too much about my Rey team, and two, I wanted to move on. so I left him at R3 with the plan of like sooner or later I'll come back and R7 him. I haven't gotten back to it, but I left him at R3 because that's what I needed for him to be able to do his job with Datacron. So I took him to R3 and I left him there, and guess what? He's been performing. I've been beating R8s, R9 Rays and mirrors, even with the Raycron, with Holdocron. Like my Rey and Ben do exactly what I need them to do, and I would say he probably deserves the R7. I just haven't gotten to it yet. So that's the kind of the benchmarks of what I do. As long as they're not requirements, R3s are restricted for do I want this team to have a Datacron, then everyone needs to be R3. R5 is this an amazing team where I want everyone to have a good amount of survivability, then R5 should be the benchmark of where you leave them, because that's going to give you the performance where the entire team just doesn't die. Because even my bad Stilla at R3, she dies quite often actually, but I don't have the time to take her to R5. But if I would, that may increase her survivability and could save me some banners in the future. And then the R7s are the absolute banger characters that you need them to perform, and that's where you park them. Anything above that, R8s are, and even GLs, like I leave them at R7. They perform as long as you mod them and you mod them well, then they're going to perform exactly how you need them to. And then the R8s, R9s are restricted to either requirements, or you're going to increase the relics on those characters that are so instrumental that you want them to be higher relics because they're good, but also you need to take a break from bronzium wiring. So I don't subscribe to the R8 all my GLs. Maybe when I get all the GLs, then I might take a break to R8 my more important ones, and maybe R9, because an R9 GL, when modded very well, can be very difficult to deal with, and that may be a benefit for me. But that's my philosophy on how I assign my relic levels. And what that is going to do for you is it's going to allow you to efficiently continue building new things, but the stuff that you put into your account is going to perform the way you need it to. And I want to give you a good example that I see all the time. So I tell everyone, farm Jabba, farm Jabba, farm Jabba. But I don't know how many times I've seen someone farm Jabba and they leave their bush and Chrysanthemum at R5. And that severely limits the team. An R5 bush and R5 Chrysanthemum is not going to perform the way that you need it to. It's just not. They're not going to. That's the sword and the shield of the team. And if you have them at lower relics, then bush dies really easy and the team kind of falls apart. Or Chrysanthemum, it dies faster, and again, the team falls apart. So you need those two to survive. But if you notice, my skiff guard Lando, he's R5, and I don't really regret that, because even when I do TB, I can just fill in with a bounty hunter. So if I have an R7 node, because my Jabba's only R7, then I can go Jabba, Boba, Bush, Chrysanthemum, and then I can just fill in with Jango, who's a R7 requirement. So it's not that big of a deal for TB if you for something like that. And that's where you have to look. Do I need to increase all these relic levels? Are they really super instrumental? And while I would say skiff guard Lando, at first I thought, yeah, not that important, but he's a very good character. He does very good damage. Maybe in the future I will take him to R7, but right now I live in a world where I have to budget what I do, and I'm trying to get as much stuff, all the GLs as I can. I'm trying to get Zepho, I'm trying to get Mandalore, I'm trying to be as effective as possible, and it's a balance between performance with old stuff and acquiring new stuff. And that's the thresholds that I use, that's the philosophies. So let me know if you do something different, if you think other characters rate certain relics, or what's your philosophy on how you do this. Otherwise, thanks for watching and take care.